you look back now and you can see purpose and like a tapestry that's been woven together, and being able to bring the stuff that I've learned or experienced to bear, now and obviously going forward as well in what I'm trying to do in a small way in serving this ministry and the churches in Europe.
Welcome to With You Podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Tara.
I'm a marriage and family therapist and professor.
And I'm a birth doula and educator.
And we're married to each other. We've raised 4 kids, and we're in professions, as you see, that deal with coming alongside people.
Right. So in this podcast, we're going to share what we've learned about relationships and life transitions. We'll do that by sharing our own experiences, by interviewing people who have a great story to tell. Mm-hmm. And we've got some expert interviews to give us some even better information.
It's going to be so good. Let's get started.
Please join us.
So glad you could join us today. We're here with Dr. Joel Morris. He is a Renaissance man. And so Joel started his career in engineering, leading to being a professor of engineering in Seoul, Korea at the Seoul National University. Joel's organizational leadership, his ability to translate research into the marketplace led him to create a company about airplanes, aerospace technology company, and then working in the nuclear sector. Right? Does that sound familiar?
I think that, I did all that.
I was hoping that today we could talk a little bit about the transitions that happened in your life, because I think for a lot of us, we grew up where jobs were like, you'd have your job and you'd hope to stay there 20, 30 years, get the gold watch. Most of the kids I talk to nowadays don't know what that means.
That's right.
And for us in the States here, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics talk about that people between 18 and 48 will have changed jobs 11.7 times. So about 10 to 12 jobs that you have over the course of your career that you're moving.
Yeah, I kind of spent my whole engineering career really within academia, but not just in academia. It was within the connection sort of interface between science, engineering, research, and connecting with industry. And so applying that research to make money out of, to solve real world problems. And so that's always where I found myself fitting in, being sort of not content with just focusing on research for the sake of it, for study, for academic work, but actually I wanted it to connect with the real world and to be used in the real world and to help people to be useful and make money and all the rest of it, for it to have a point and a purpose, I guess.
I love that, because usually researchers are just about figuring out information, getting published, and then moving on. So you want to be practical.
Yeah, I think engineering is a sort of discipline that you are more practically minded, maybe. Or, I mean, I did my doctorate and my master's degree based in a company, based with companies that they decided the projects that, or certainly I was presented with projects that they wanted done within the research, and they were real world projects, real world problems, and we were part of a team of people within the companies that were working on this bigger project. And my research projects were part of that bigger project sort of piece of work. And we came into the boardrooms, presented our findings. So whether it was aerospace, I did a master's course with Airbus, looking at the fuel pipes in the wings and improving the protection of aluminium fuel pipe castings, and trying to save money and make it a more efficient process. And then lastly with Tata, which is a steel company, Indian steel company, we were working on a dual phase steel, and this is old technology now, but with Porsche at the time were putting it in their Cayenne car. And so that was a fun project. That was a 4-year project.
Did you get to drive the Cayenne at all?
No.
Oh.
Of course not.
I thought that would be a benefit.
But they had a cool kind of hot rolling facility in Wales that we got to play with, and we had little steel ingots, so we could heat them up and roll them out and create little steel coils from like this sort of model. So that was kind of fun.
That is kind of fun. So there's some hands-on, and it's interesting because you have, getting back to kind of the Renaissance aspect. So you have this science background, you have this engineering background, and then we roll over of this academic within engineering, but then getting into kind of faith and getting into theology. The rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say, for Joel, is that he's worked in other areas as well, of Operation Mobilization on the Logos 2, which is basically like a floating book library, book fair, bookstore, and you covered 28 countries.
Yeah, I think we went to 28 countries in 2 years. And the Logos 2, now they've got a bigger, newer ship called the Logos Hope, and they've just bought another ship called the Doulos Hope. And those ships are going around the world. They are floating book stores, but also they have hundreds of missionaries on them that go out into churches, mobilize for mission, evangelism, work with churches. They'll go to a country and an area and work with the local churches to do programs, to do outreaches. They'll do humanitarian work. So when I was on the ship, I was confined to the engine room for 2 years because I was an engineer, of course. But it was great. I really enjoyed seeing everything massive and blown up, and I could figure out how these systems work. There's a pump, there's a valve, and so you could sort of see how everything worked because it was all massive, and we were trained up and stripping engines down, huge engines, and welding and doing plumbing and all sorts of things, getting covered in sewage. But yeah, I did that in between my first and my second degree.
Okay.
So that really helped me get grounded in just practically. I found that quite stimulating to be doing, not just to be studying engineering. So my first degree was in materials engineering, material science. So not just being theoretical and looking at a microscope, but actually, here's what the materials are used on. Here, there's the application. That was always an interest, and a big influence in my life through university was the head of the department at Swansea University. At the time, it was a 5-star department, and he was one of these old school industrialists that you see in Britain, and someone who could go into the micro and really get into the microstructures and the chemical makeup of the material, and do the complex research on the materials, invent new materials. He came up with this theorem for creep in jet engines. So
what's creep?
Creep is when you have the turbine blades that are spinning at high speed and high loading, and with the high temperatures as well, and they kind of grow, and so the turbine blades stretch, and they have abradable seals on the outsides of the engines to make sure they don't leak because of this sort of growth. And so he could predict the lifing of the turbine blades, and also fatigue is another thing as well that you can predict life for, which is another important thing in flying planes, to make sure they don't come down. But so he could do that. He could do the complex math, and also he would come out to the macro, and he could look at the sort of cradle to grave kind of life cycle process of systems, and he could save money for companies by pointing out a few things that they can improve on with the manufacturing of the materials or whatever, the application of it. And he could make money. He could apply these discoveries, these breakthroughs. And, I was involved in a university spin-out company to basically take an idea and get some funding for it and do a proof of concept, and then approach a company and patent it. And so that really, I love that creativity, and it's entrepreneurial, isn't it? That's what it is. Yeah. And it's enjoying the complexity and the detail and the creativity of it, but actually that it's actually worth something, and it's got a purpose, and there's an output and an application, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, and you say that entrepreneurship, that seems to be a thread through all your careers, all the different type of activities that you have. And I think a lot of people worry about, okay, what's my call? How should I, whether it's in college, in grad school, I have to know. And these decisions are going to be life decisions that are going to stick with me for the rest of time. That really doesn't seem to be the case. And not only do you have the engineering, not only the mission focus, the entrepreneurship, you're also an author in terms of writing about generosity in your Big Hearted book, and a revolutionary view of compassion and relationship instead of individual self-gratification. And you're an author, entrepreneur, engineer, but with all of that, you've moved careers multiple times that seem pretty disconnected.
Yeah.
They don't seem to have a theme through them. But maybe as we look back, we can talk what led to each of those kind of decision points, transitions. How'd you navigate that, and how do you make sense of that now? And just for everybody else, if you haven't noticed, Joel and I speak English together, but slightly differently.
Who has the accent, though?
I have the accent. I have an American accent, and Joel has the proper Wales accent.
Oh, I like that.
And speaks Her Majesty's English, and I'm not quite sure what kind of. I'm just struggling with English as a second language. My first language is sarcasm. So you live in Wales. You're a Welshman. You're currently the executive director in charge of strategic and operation for Union School of Theology, and you're married and have 3 kids. So That's why I say you're an entrepreneur, a Renaissance man. You're a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you don't do?
Lots. A lot of engineers I found are musicians, strangely. Yeah, I don't know why.
Well, music and math are similar kind of languages, I think, is what I learned in my great liberal arts education. I don't understand either music or math. So again, I'm really struggling just with English, let alone anything else. So thinking about transitions, there's all these transitions happening. People want to know kind of what's the call for my life? What am I supposed to do? How did you, as a young man thinking about leaving home, starting university, how did you think through, where's my career? What am I going to do? How'd you make these decisions across these various engineering, entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I don't think I was that good at making decisions, actually.
Okay.
If I go back to going to university, I had the opportunity to do it in terms of having the grades to be able to go to university. Probably the first in my family to go to university in my sort of direct family circle.
What led to that for you? Separate from that, wasn't a family kind of pattern or value?
No, not really. I think I just wanted to have bigger horizons. So I lived in the valley in Wales, coal mining town, working class, and I knew I had a bit of a brain and I could learn stuff and perform in exams and do school. I wasn't very motivated, I don't think, but I knew I wanted to get out and experience the world and do something with my life that was more than what was around me. And so university was a way of doing that. So it wasn't a very good sort of decision-making process. They offered me a grant to study in this course.
Yeah.
I had a choice of doing, I think, chemistry or materials science. I enjoy materials at I don't know what you call it here, but we call it college. But it's not college. It's sort of the level below.
Okay.
Or you do A levels.
Yeah.
I did it in my sixth form school.
Okay.
And really enjoyed that. So I went to check that out, and they offered me some money. I went to chemistry. It looked a little rough, and I thought, I'll go where the money is. This is very spiritual
that's a
decision. But I enjoyed it, and so, I got into that, found it quite demanding. Everybody had done advanced mathematics, I hadn't. So I had like a year of whatever else is partying. I had to work like stink to get by. Graduated, made it, was happy to get out. It found it quite the way that they were delivering it, and the lectures I found it quite difficult. It wasn't kind of my way I wanted to learn. And so again, a sort of academic versus maybe more practical way of learning.
That experiential piece is kind of, as we heard just throughout, doing isn't a big part of who you are. So education in terms of lecture, I've taught kind of in different cultures, and a lot of people say education is there's this little box in the front of your forehead, and the good professors open the box of the students, put the information in, and then the students share it back. And that's education. And as you were talking, it sounds like engineering is a little bit like that. You need to know the information,
yes.
But then what you do with it isn't necessarily taught in the coursework.
Yeah, and I wasn't really motivated. I'm a bit of a dreamer. I think in university and school, just a big dreamer, and just I'd be off thinking about other things.
Where are those people partying, and why am I doing math?
No, I don't know, inventions and ideas, and so I think I found lectures quite dull and monotonous, and some of it was stimulating, but I wasn't very motivated. I found that once I had a wife and family, I suddenly found a motivation to work harder in university. I went back, did my master's course after the ship, and I was very motivated. I enjoyed the work because it was practical. I felt like I was sort of my own boss with, I've got this project, I need to go and do this research, I've got the tools to do it. And I was driven, and I excelled. And I was like one of the higher performance students, if not, at times the highest performance student in the course, at both master's and doctorate level. Whereas when I was an undergraduate, I just wasn't very motivated. I thought, I can do anything, go around the world, just explore, experience life, that sort of thing. And I think, getting married, having responsibility really kind of focused me, and it channeled my creativity, and my gifts and my skills and experience came together for the first time, I think. But the big kind of pivot moments really are God moments. So not that I had any grand plan or any kind of drive. I wanted to serve the Lord. I thought I could do that in my job and support mission and really put myself into church. I started to play music and lead worship in the church, and so enjoyed that. But it was when God sort of stepped in that I had to take notice, and you had these big 180-degree turns. So the first one was when I joined OM, Operation Mobilization, as a missionary. I'd been Christian Union president in Swansea, and after that I backslid quite badly, just through my work and compromising, and found myself quite far from God. First time that had happened to me. And as God was restoring me and using people to call me back to himself, to help rebuild my heart and my closeness with him, my relationship with him, I really needed someone to help me. And my mate, who was he was an ex-prisoner, reformed, became a Christian, went to university as well, and he crossed the street, come talk to me. All my other friends that I knew at university as part of the Christian Union kind of avoided me because I was like, I'd fallen from grace or whatever, but I hadn't.
Not in the same space as they were at that time.
Yeah, I found that quite hard to deal with. I knew I was still a Christian. I knew I still loved the Lord, but I felt far away and cold, and I couldn't do anything in myself. I didn't feel I could do anything. I was praying. And so he met with me every week with another friend who had also backslid at the time, and it really helped rebuild me and rebuild my heart. And then I went out to visit another friend who was on the ship with OM, and he encouraged me to join up. And I just said, I'm so unworthy, I'm just a mess. Why would God want me to be a missionary on a ship?
Yeah.
like, I've got nothing to give. And he's like, well, we need engineers, and I really think, you should pray about this. I was like, no way, man. Like, that's just not going to fly.
Yeah.
So I went with him on a week's mission somewhere in Holland, and it was great. And I really got to see God using the team in a great way to reach people. And I just felt this finger on my chest going, you can have this.
Yeah.
You need to listen to this invitation. And I just knew that the Lord was speaking through him, and I couldn't really run away from it. So he asked me again, and I said, I didn't say no. I just said, okay, I'm going to pray about it and think about it. I'm like, I know this is going. So yeah, I went home and I told people. They started giving me money to go and do this, and that was really, for me, the kind of confirming factor that this was right. And I went away for 2 years. I discovered there were people like me on the ship, broken.
Yeah,
they weren't perfect. They weren't like put on a pedestal, missionary. Look at this great person. They, pretty much everybody
doing the job and then finding creative ways to express yourself.
Yeah, and God, in serving others, God was working in them, in their hearts, and rebuilding them. And I was the same. And I'm like, such a lot of grace there, and this is just the beauty of missions, that we're not meant to be perfect, and it's really about what God's doing through mission and through imperfect, broken people, and you get fixed up as well at the same time.
It's interesting because you talk about in other conversations we've had, this idea of uncertainty, motivation, and change are kind of themes through the transition of, there's like, I don't know if this is where I am. I don't know if I'm able to do this. There's a lot of not knowing and uncertainty.
Oh, yeah. No idea.
And filling it in. We were talking earlier of filling in that with a lot of different things. That uncertainty can at times feel like loneliness or emptiness, or there's lots of words, but just, I don't feel I deserve this. I don't think. And whether it's playing music and looking for the accolades, or kind of looking for escapes in partying or in other distractions, that uncertainty kind of grabs hold of us, and we just are reactive to it without motivation, without that. And it sounds like for you, through God speaking directly to you through other people, started to lean on that uncertainty and the different places you were responding to that to motivate you for something different and make change.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really clinging to Christ in that, because I think being on mission and knowing you can't really do this. And I remember being in Panama doing a weeks-long mission with the team and leading the team, and it was so hot and humid, just really struggling just to do the simple things and go out, and we're expected to go and do some preaching on evangelism, and I'm like, I just want to lay here and just die. But I found that I was trying to do it in my own strength and what's expected of me, this sort of feeling of duty. But I was listening to a tape. This is old as listen to a tape.
So what is it? What is a tape?
Cassette tape of John Piper on "Let the Nations Be Glad," and just the sort of motivation of that mission exists because worship doesn't, and actually that this is God's work anyway, and I don't need to carry it on my back and make this happen. But actually I can worship Him as I tell people, as I do mission, I'm worshiping and lifting His and proclaiming His name. And it just got easier, that instead of it being a chore and a duty, that in the spirit that we can glorify Christ and make Him known by just extolling His name and lifting His name up, and telling people not through a sort of sense of duty and what's expected of me, but just as a worshipper of Jesus, as a disciple. And so He showed me that really it's Him that I need to cling to, not do these things to be accepted or to feel loved or valued, but actually that there's nothing that is going to make Him love me more and value me more than what I have already in Christ. And and that was really liberating for me. And so that sort of first taste of mission, of serving and doing ministry was really formational for me. And in getting the purpose and the motivation right, and theologically in that as well, that the Lord, it's the Lord's work. He's, he sends his son out on mission. The Father sends out the Son on mission to save us. And that's so liberating, that this is not up to me to see people saved. This is not up to me to, he is sovereign in salvation, and he is working, through with us, but through his Spirit. And so, that was great. And then,
well, it's interesting too, because it's not in isolation. So the things you've been saying about, it's been people on the fellow students, the fellow student who was out of prison, in school, kind of involved in your life, and saying, "Hey, try this. Let's do this." And then people on the ship saying, "Hey, why don't you give this a go?" It's not just you sitting solitary by yourself, but that there's these relationships that God is working through to also kind of get your attention. I often talk about it takes kind of getting slapped in the head for me to get my attention. There's a level of pain that's required for me to pay attention. I should probably figure that out and try, but I think we try to avoid pain a lot of times and not see it as functional, not see it as informative, of like, oh, I'm hurting here, and rather than getting reactive and pushing it down or avoiding it or isolating, how do I lean into it? But for me, and it sounds like for you, that interaction with others is a space. And I think that's not a common thing for people. They feel like they have to figure it out on their own. They have to, if God's going to talk to me, it'll be just me quietly sitting in a park or in my devotions, and are we listening in relationship to others, forming us, being the hands, being the voice, being the interaction with God in those moments.
Yeah, I mean, it's discipleship, isn't it? Really enjoying having a group at church at the moment. We call it discipleship group, DNA, disciple, nurture, and act. And it's supercharging Christian growth in your lives, as you share life together, as you pray together, as you read stuff together, and you walk together, discipling each other. It's really fantastic for helping to challenge stuff in each other that's not good, or in a constructive way, but encouraging each other, praying for each other. We're relational animals. We're not meant to be in isolation. We're meant to be in community. I mean, the sort of Great Commission of making disciples, it kind of, within that, it kind of assumes that you're going to disciples.
There's more than one
together.
Is that, do you find in your DNA groups, in your disciple nurturing and action groups, is it all people in the same life cycle stage, all people in the same kind of, all engineers that formerly were on Logo Ship and now are at seminary or
in my
School
group?
of Theology?
We're all similar ages with kids, so it's kind of, that's nice to have a like common things that. But some are quite a bit older, maybe grandparents. Some my sort of age with young kids, but that it's a nice mix. That it's not too the same.
I wonder about that in transition, thinking about career transition, but just life transition of, there's something helpful of realizing I'm not in it alone. Like we're at the same space in terms of parenting young kids. And so, my kids aren't broken any differently than yours. Because I think in isolation, we think, this is unique to, there's something special wrong with me as a parent, or there's something special wrong with my partner or my kid. And then we're with others in the same place, and it kind of frees up that kind of, we're not unique, we're struggling together. And
that's what church should be like, isn't it?
Yeah.
We should be able to have these conversations together, and it's the vulnerability of sharing our problems and our brokenness, and actually realizing we're not the only ones going through this, and there may be some helpful things we could pick up from other people, and at least to pray together. And I think sharing is a big deal of helping you to kind of tackle the issues.
Yeah, well, the threatening side or the seductive side is really that kind of idea of isolation, of the lie of you're in it alone or this is only you. And being able to share that and talk about that together can be helpful. And also kind of the hope part. So there's a reassurance with like-minded people, but there's also the hope part of, talking with people that have been through it before, that, like old people like me that have adult children, being able to go, oh yeah, I see what you're talking about, Joel. And yeah, we went through that too. And here's what went on for us. And they survived, and they're doing well. But man, without the bigger picture, that momentary experience can be overwhelming and fearful and uncertain.
I don't know if it's men are just the worst at this, aren't they?
Yeah.
Women tend to get together and have a natter and,
this would be nice to have Tara here, right? So she could be like, no, women are struggling with that too. But
well, that's my kind of
our assumption.
Well, I know we're terrible at at sharing our thoughts and emotions and stuff, and
being vulnerable.
Yeah. We don't tend to get together either much. I don't know, maybe it's a British thing, but at the pub maybe.
Yeah.
Over a pint, but you don't just stop when you're evangelizing and telling people about the gospel and making disciples at that point, but actually you're discipling people and you're being discipled your whole life. And it's a life of discipleship we're called to. And
I love that, because it's exactly what you're talking about, your engineering experience of, you can learn the information, but if you're not applying it, what's the point of, if there's not the experiential piece of that, whether it's faith, engineering, writing a book, if no one's going to read it, there's an interaction component. That's
vital. Always been important to me. But even writing the books as well, even though I say like, I'm doing this for me, and it's sort of what I do in my spare time. It feeds my soul, but still it's sort of part of the motivation, because it's got an output. It's not just going to sit on my computer and go nowhere, but it's of help to people, which is it's part of the motivation, even though it is kind of a little bit selfish that I'm doing it because I enjoy it, and it's sort of therapeutic, so it's something I can do quietly, and it doesn't sound like it's very collaborative, but
but it's sharing, right? So I know I'm an academic nerd, and I actually write authors. When I read their material, I consider it a emotional bid to interact. And so when I read something, I write, and a lot of times authors are responsive and kind of want to interact, because I think there's a desire for here's my heart, here's my thought, and it's not just I'm an expert and I'm feeding this to you, but can we interact around it? Because it
always blows me away that people read my books and want to talk about it. Like, wow, okay, that's great. Thank you.
But it is more, I think it is, it can be both, and it can be therapeutic and really important to you as an author, or to people in terms of whatever they're doing. There can be a self-satisfying aspect to it, and it also can be compassionate, engaging, and relational. The difference is, what's back to our motivation? What's our motivation? Am I writing my books just for the cash? Or am I writing my books?
Definitely not. If you're a Christian author, you're not doing it for the cash.
Nope. Or am I doing it to espouse, this is the way to think? And most authors, that's not the case. There's some, but most authors, it's, I have an idea and I want to share it and sharpen, and how do we foster a kind of way of having those conversations? So you did this entrepreneurship, you were an engineer, you started your own company. How did you get to seminary? So you were teaching engineering in Seoul at Seoul National University.
Not really. I was more, again, on the interface with industry and politics. So long story, I went into Korea to finish writing my thesis for my doctorate. Had to rent my house in Wales because I ran out of funding. So got it done, and then I got offered a job at Seoul National University, which is a great, it's one of the top universities in Seoul, in the nuclear engineering department. Well, I found that it's very similar to what I studied with aerospace, similar materials, similar approaches. So it took me about 6 months to really learn the ropes there, and kind of reapply what I'd been doing before. So I moved from like aerospace to cars, steel, and then to nuclear power generation. But it was very political and very kind of in that whole world of non-proliferation and security, and I was involved in lots of working with embassies in Korea. Obama's visit in 2012, the Security Summit. So great, lots of opportunity to grow, and I thought, quite often I thought it's really going somewhere, and in terms of career and opportunities opening up, and a great network, and really kind of, there's not many. At that time in Seoul, there are not a lot of non-Koreans there professionally working at that level, and sort of sticking with it. So that was kind of cool, and I was given a lot of latitude at the university, and my professor, and he used to take me out in the evenings, so these sort of high-powered meetings with the executives of Samsung and Hyundai Heavy Industries and places like that, which was wonderful experience and fun. And we had a great life in Korea with my wife, and in the university we had a great apartment, and I thought a couple of opportunities would come, and I was waiting and praying, and didn't know, again, not knowing where I'm going. Felt then, this is it now, this is a career path for me. Nothing came really, just sort of waiting. So I was still I wasn't given a role at the university as such. I was they have a name for it, Paxonym, which is kind of, I think it's like postdoc. Research, but they, kind of assistant professor. It's interchangeable names.
You're
but
at the beginning level of
I wasn't a tenured professor or anything. And I built a lab for them. I made some money from research projects that I helped create with European companies. So that was great. Engaging again politically with lots of different organizations for nuclear security with IAEA, and then God did something unexpected. And at the time I was worshiping in a church called Sarang Community Church in Seoul, really big church. My wife was on staff there working with the kids ministry, and they started talking about a partnership with this old seminary in Wales that they really had a heart for, to help them turn it around, help save it, and make it successful.
So how was their connection from Seoul, Korea to a church seminary in Wales? Like that seems a strange...
Good question.
Strange connection. Like, how did they, other than you being a Welshman there, how did they even know that Wales existed?
Well, there was a lady who was a church member of that church, and she went there. There's this historical connection between Korea and Wales that centers around this guy called Robert Jermaine Thomas, who I'd never heard of. And he was this Welsh guy who went to China with his family and got into missions, and heard about this hermit kingdom called Korea, and felt that he wanted, the Lord was saying to go and take the gospel to Korea. So I think he tried to do that once and failed, and his wife died and his child died on voyage and stuff like this. And it was still a closed country at the time, and so he basically hitched a ride with an American ship called the General Sherman, and they were trying to sort of force trade open in Korea. And so they sailed up the Pyongyang River to Pyongyang, and got attacked, and there was sort of a drawn out thing where they, I think they kidnapped some local, leader, and
the Sherman, the the American ship
Yes.
kidnapped someone.
I think so. If my memory serves.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to build relationships and make friends.
Yeah. Yeah, and different people were trying to open up trade, I think, with Korea. And basically, the ship got firebombed. Everybody got killed. Robert Jermaine Thomas made it to the riverbank with the Bibles and started giving Bibles out to people and shouting out the name of Jesus. And he was beheaded on the riverbank. And so just setting foot upon Korean soil was martyred. And it's because he was on the ship, basically. Yep. And so, so he'd been forgotten in where I hadn't heard about this guy.
Yeah.
It wasn't really celebrated. But then I noticed after getting married to my wife that all these Koreans were coming to Wales. Like, what are all these Koreans doing here?
Yeah.
And why are they going to that place, And so got to hear about the story. I was amazed by it. It was basically the guy that killed Thomas took the Bibles and papered his house with the scriptures, like wallpapered the inside of the house, which kind of was what they did.
Okay.
And so they really love paper, and if you've been to Korea, you'll see some of the like screen doors and stuff. So
it was artistic.
He would read the walls.
Yeah.
And he was saved through reading the gospel, and his family were saved. And people that came to visit his house were saved, as the story goes, through reading the walls. And that became the first church in Korea.
Wow.
And so, this is what I've read or what I've heard, that the American missionaries turned up maybe decades later and found this sort of indigenous church already there in like, what's this doing here? and so they were Presbyterians, and they built the first church building in Pyongyang. And if you look at the picture, it looks like it's a Presbyterian church building from the West, but they called it the Thomas Memorial Church.
Oh, wow.
And there was a seminary there as well. In 1907, there was a Great Awakening, which is just a huge revival in Korea that impacted the whole of Asia. And again, there's a connection historically with Wales, with the Welsh revival. And so there's this sort of historical connection. And so why do they partner with this seminary that was really, it would gone past its sort of the point of being restored. And yet in God's grace, he connected them, and through this church member being in Wales praying at a prayer meeting, she met one of our students who was there, who was Korean. I was able to share about the story, about the school, and she just felt touched to do something to help save this school that was really gonna die. And it's the last evangelical school left in Wales. We used to have quite a few, and it would have been, we wouldn't have been able to raise up our own leaders from within Wales, that sort of accredited and everything. So she wanted to do something. The church got involved. They came over. All these reporters turned up at the time, and they were like, "What's going on?" And so I was connected when I was in Korea to this project that they were just working out. What do we do? How do we help them? And their genuine heart they put someone in charge of that project who they felt could be a bridge person, and so I get sort of called into his office every week, every Sunday, and just sort of all these questions, will this work? What if we do that? Like, no, don't do that. Just not knowing how to help. And then I reached, I had this experience where I felt that, again, this is one of these like big pivot moments where I didn't think I was going to go, and so I was involved with this project, with this partnership. No one in Wales knew I existed. I was out in Korea, a Welshman, advising these guys on this
all the while doing your nuclear, all the engineering side of things and business side of things.
And really enjoying that and loving that, and sort of channeling my creativity into that and my passion. And I was at the signing ceremony actually, where I met who was the principal at the time briefly, and he was like, "Oh, we need people like you," he said, a sort of throwaway comment, and then just sort of carried on walking. I thought, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Didn't take much notice of it, and yeah, one day, I think I was wrestling with, where am I going? What am I doing? Again, it's always got to have like, what's my focus?
Yeah.
And I just experienced sort of being completely emptied of all that creativity and passion that I had for engineering and entrepreneurship in that, in engineering, just being completely emptied out, like within 24 hours, like somebody tipped out a glass of water and just it gone. I thought I'm having some sort of breakdown or crisis.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with me? This is weird. Like, it's involuntary.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything. I'm just I'm a passenger here.
Yep.
But then shortly after, I felt being filled with an equal passion and energy and creativity for the kingdom. I really related it to mission, what I felt when I was doing mission with OM on the ship, and it felt a similar kind of calling. And I wanted to do something that was all in, that I could just give it everything to, but feeling a real kind of filling of passion and creativity for building the church and particular focus of the UK and Europe. We're all within a sort of short space of time. And then one Sunday, well, pretty much at the same time, the Koreans said, well, there's this role going at the school that we've created. We think we need to have someone as kind of a COO kind of role to really make the sustainable, turn it around, and to drive through some changes. And there's no one there really they're all either theologians or administrative people.
Yeah.
There's no one there with a kind of entrepreneurial gifting to go, and also we want someone that we know and knows Korea and can be a bit of a bridge person with this project.
Yeah.
So I kind of came with the money, if you like,
Yeah.
that they were investing into preserving and turning it around.
Yeah. And you were that bridge.
Yeah. And I just knew again that God was putting his finger on my chest and going,
how did you and your wife navigate that? Because you're living in Korea and it's comfortable, and
we were happy.
You were happy.
We were settled. I thought this, and it's funny because 2 weeks after, I had like 3 job offers, like ridiculous job offers.
So you've been waiting, nothing.
Yeah.
Now you have a kind of vision, and everything's opening up.
Yeah. So one was to do a spin-out company with my professor in the university.
Yeah.
With what we were doing, and then attaché with the British Embassy, and then the last one was with a German engineering company, TUV. And they even walked me into my, this is going to be your office, this is your desk. I'm like, oh my goodness, stop it!
Nice.
Like overlooking the Han River in this ridiculous, high-rise building.
Beautiful.
Took me to the top floor where I was on my interview with the president of the company, and in this restaurant, and I'd say like, I can't take the job. I'm gonna go back to Wales and run a seminary.
Yeah, and
but I know another guy that could do it.
Yeah, here, let me give you a name. But I'm heading to Wales. And was the family on board? Like, was it a shared vision or
not initially? No.
No. Okay.
No, because I was experiencing it internally.
Yeah.
And all these things for me were lining up, and I just knew I had been there before. And and this looks familiar.
Yeah, so
and I know I need to go. I can't run away from this thing. If I take one of these jobs, I know I'm gonna have a Jonah experience or something.
Yeah, that's no good.
Gonna get swallowed by a whale.
Yeah, and regurgitation's no fun.
No, you can't wash that out.
No, you can't get that out, no matter how much bleach you use.
So, so my wife it took a bit longer for her. I think maybe 2 months. And I said, like, if are you really not convinced, we won't go. But like, here's what I'm experiencing and what I'm sensing from the Lord, and this is the opportunity. But we weren't looking to go back to Wales. It
Yeah.
was, as far as I was concerned,
You're going to live in Korea.
We'll live in Korea. Great. I had loads of money. I had loads of opportunities.
Yeah.
But I knew I wouldn't be happy if I stayed there. So it took her a while, but God spoke to her in His way, and she said, "Right, we're going to do this. Let's move the family again to a different continent and sell all our stuff and pack it up, and and it was quite hard actually leaving.
Yeah,
to just people couldn't understand you're leaving this, like." What you have is ridiculous. My professor wasn't. He was. Oh well.
He wasn't too happy.
Wasn't too happy.
Yeah.
So it was hard, but I had to say, I had to say, God's calling me to this.
Yeah.
I believe this is right. And
some of other stories I've heard about life transitions, usually the transition happens after some kind of crisis or pain or and for you it sounds like it was an internal process. There's actually not discomfort but lots of opportunities and having to have the clarity of, well, we're doing change not because of avoiding suffering or we need to because things aren't going well, but as a motivation of this is what I should be doing versus I have to do this because there's nothing else, or I have to do this because of a crisis.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't because of a crisis or, I have to do, but I kind of did feel like I had, on both occasions, I had to do it.
Yeah.
I did feel that because I felt that, I knew that beyond a shadow of a doubt, through prayer and through things just happening.
Yeah.
When you just know in your soul that the Lord is speaking and you have to listen, and if you try and run away from that, he's gonna hound you down. And
I would say having your wife, having those close family members, of being in step of like that, it's not just an internal experience and it's confirmed in terms of the significant people in your life that are also looking for God's kind of clarity in this.
Yeah, I mean, and with the professional people, didn't really understand it, but the guys at the church were the ones really going, you're the guy. We think you're the guy we're looking for, and God's placed you here for this season, for this time. If you hadn't come to Korea, we wouldn't be sending you back. And they sort of recognized that in making me a missionary with my wife. But it's very much you're doing it together, and we're moving and committing to this work together.
Well, it's fun to look back with you to see how all of those pieces, you and I have talked about this before, they're like Legos. All the Lego pieces go together, and it's like, it's coming together in a whole where at the moment in time, it's a one-off. There's like, I'm in engineering school. I'm on the logo ship. I'm in Korea. There's these job opportunities in the aerospace and nuclear, and they all seem separate. Right?
What's happening? What is it? There's no thread, but you look back now and you can see purpose and like a tapestry that's been woven together, and being able to bring the stuff that I've learned or experienced to bear now, and obviously going forward as well in what I'm trying to do in a small way in serving this ministry and the churches in Europe. And
that's where our lives intersected. So we were in Poland, sitting out on a patio, talking, getting to know each other, and hearing you kind of in this new transition space of an opportunity had come up and trying to make sense of it, and kind of watching a new friend who just met kind of go through the process we've been talking about, again, looking into the future of you and I were talking about the metaverse. And my first thought was you were talking about Marvel movies, which isn't the metaverse, that's the multiverse. Yeah. But for me, it was the same thing. I'm like a therapist. So I was like, multiple realities. And you're like, no, David, the metaverse. I
thought you were joking.
No, I joke a lot, but that time it was like, no, I have no idea what's happening here. You're talking and I'm like, I think this man has lost his mind. He thinks that the multiverse and Marvel Comics is real. But you were offered kind of some ideas about moving forward at the seminary into this new kind of endeavor. And I thought we could spend the last bit of time talking about how the transitions you've navigated, that idea of uncertainty, motivation, change, and being connected to God's bigger vision through his speaking to you, through others, and opportunities that come up, that kind of big picture that allows you to make a movement in the moment. That's what I got to see in Poland with you, is that start of, oh, here's the next thing, that all these pieces as we shared life together and you were telling me your story of like, oh, I can see how this all goes together, all your science background, music, kind of learning by doing, your openness to relationship and how that guides you. And then your work at the School of Theology, all leads into this idea of the metaverse. So it's exciting to see that in the moment, and maybe you can let everybody know what is the metaverse. Obviously, I don't want you to think it's the multiverse, because that's just a knucklehead idea from an old man here. So what is the metaverse?
It's kind of, well, I'm still figuring it out. I think we're all still figuring it out, what it is or what it's becoming.
Yeah.
It's the sort of, what they call it, World Wide Web 3, the sort of third iteration.
Yeah.
Where it's suddenly we're seeing the ability to have community in a virtual space on a platform. A lot of it's built on, I think, on gaming, gaming platforms and that sort of immersive technology. But it's really an opportunity to build community virtually and to have that in a blended way as well, not just completely virtually. Obviously, there's cryptocurrencies, there's NFTs, and so there's an economy there as well, which is unregulated, and it's connecting people in a way that they haven't been connected before, and it's given them connectivity with each other that kind of is permanent through what they call wallet addresses.
Yeah.
And so it's really a bit of a frontier thing at the moment, where there's a lot of pioneering and no one really knows where it's heading, but it's definitely going to be just this huge thing that's going to change all our lives, I really think. And again, a few weeks ago or a few months ago, whatever it was, I was completely oblivious to this until somebody thrust it upon me and sort of said, yeah, we think you should be doing this, and here's some resources to create a center at Union, at the campus, and we want you to lead it up. And I was like, oh, okay, this is crazy.
What does that mean?
Yeah, but the same people involved in me coming back to Wales and reforming the seminary and creating this ministry called Union, which now has a publishing house and a research centre in Oxford, and we're doing church planting, resourcing. The same people are involved with this, and initially it was just a matter of going through a process of grappling with, is this for real?
Yeah.
Is this right? And then talking with people like yourself, like some of the guys.
Yep, our friends at
Wheaton.
Yep.
Who I greatly esteem and listen to, at Wheaton alumni, and just the reactions that I've had from other people who have told, and has made me sit up and pay attention and right, no, this is legit, and this is really going to be huge, and I need to get on this. And once again, I think God's grace and providence to us as a ministry, as a small ministry in Wales, to be thinking about this when I don't know anybody else is in my kind of sphere. An opportunity for us to get ahead of this, and the importance of having Christians engage with the metaverse and connect with other Christians there and actually see it as an opportunity to disciple and evangelize and be salt and light, that we need to be there, that the gospel needs to be there because people are there, basically. It's a place of gathering where people will gather. And if we're not presenting the gospel there, other things are going to be presented. And so we can't do what usually happens especially with conservative Christians or, evangelicals. I'll just retreat, let's bury our head in the sand and hope it all blows over. And, I don't think that's going to happen with this. I think this is going to be huge, and we need to engage with it and ask the tough questions about what does it mean to be a Christian, and ethics. Look at how people are online compared to how they are in real life, and they're leading different lives and different personalities. It's going to get even worse with the metaverse, where they have their avatars and they're going to be able to express themselves freely without anyone knowing. And so, what do we do with that? How do we, identity, all of that, all the things we're seeing in our culture at the moment, we need to be able to ask the difficult questions and have well thought out answers, gospel answers. And
I think as we've talked about that, the issues are the same, whether it's in person in the city courtyard or city square, or if it's in the metaverse. And so then, so here's a different space that we're going to struggle with the same things, but are we going to be present? And what does being present virtually in the metaverse, which is, I think, the difference that you talked about between content of like your engineering education. The World Wide Web, the internet, is content based.
Just content.
I can Google
you can't
anything.
See anybody else really, unless you're in a chat room or a forum or something.
It's just information. And this is going to be the evolution of where we can be fully present in unique ways. So the relational piece is going to be kind of the value added to the metaverse, and yet the same issues we have relationally in person are going to exist in that space. And so then how do we use that space? How are we interacting in that space? I've listened since our conversations. I've listened to a lot. I've read a lot, and it can get frustrating because it's abstract enough, because it doesn't exist yet. And yet, how are we going to be active in developing it and being present in it, or are we going to be passive and not intentional but reactive?
I think there are barriers in the way, aren't there, at the moment, of understanding the technology, understanding what an NFT is, what a wallet is, how do I get one, getting a Ethereum address, but all of these sort of practical, difficult things to understand and navigate, and it's quite easy to just not engage with it because and then you're kind of playing catch up, but actually engaging with it and trying to figure it out, and engaging with other Christians that can help you. So I've been chatting with some friends, and I'm learning a lot from them. I'm learning a lot about what sort of steps I need to take to engage and to connect, and like the technology is difficult at the moment as well. It's expensive, and so there are a lot of barriers in the way. But I think we need to start talking about it, thinking about it, preparing, and looking and studying it. And we need to encourage Christians to be kind of like, I think there are a lot of Christian guys actually that are engaging and pioneering in the metaverse, from what I hear from other people. But I think there's a call on us to engage with it and connect, and draw other people to be on there as well, and not sort of to just retreat or not engage with it, because I got the feeling once it arrives, and when the market forces and the technology becomes accessible, when they align, and when that sort of allows people to experience it and to get onto it, I think it's going to go at 100 mile an hour probably, and we don't want to be left figuring it out.
It's always easier to jump on a train when it's standing still than when it's moving 100 miles an hour.
Have you tried that?
I might have jumped on a train before.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
right.
something completely different. I don't think that's what our topic's about today. But as we kind of wrap up of thinking about life transitions, I'm so thankful that you are kind of willing to share a lot of the walking through various times and thinking about people that are kind of our age looking at either retirement or a second career or a 11th career, or those that are at college trying to figure out, when I graduate, what am I going to do? What kind of takeaways would you want them to think about, given kind of your path, to kind of navigate that uncertainty, kind of tap into motivation and be intentional about the change?
I think we're all different. And I think God deals with us in different ways. So he may use a crisis. He may, he uses what he uses to shake us up, to get our attention, to do that sort of pivotal change in our lives. Sometimes we need a slap over the head.
Yeah.
I think the big things would be, for me, there have been extended periods of my life where I felt I didn't have much direction, what I wanted to know, and felt like I was sort of stumbling around in the dark. And as I look back, like you say, God has brought me to places that somehow are disconnected, like from looking at it rationally, and yet now make sense. And so he's definitely steered me and guided me through those times, and I've known a sense of mostly a sense of I'm in the right place. I'm where I need to be, even though I don't understand it. Maybe it's nothing's wasted with him. And so we do need to trust. We need to trust that he knows what he's doing, that he's got the best plan for my life, for our lives. If it was up to me, I'd mess it up so bad. But I need to follow and listen. And sometimes we struggle. Sometimes we feel like we're clambering around in the darkness and we don't know where we're going, what we're doing.
Yeah.
Or it feels like a waste. But I do believe even in those times that I'm meant to walk through those times, and they are kind of suffering times. And
not getting over, like you're saying, not getting overwhelmed or worried, but waiting involves attending too, of like waiting and looking, active looking, as well as waiting. So it's an active waiting, which is a weird kind of idea. Yeah,
you're not just sitting there waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
You pray. You're actually praying, and that's something that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeking God in it.
Yep.
You are knocking doors. Of course.
Talking to people.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Talking to people, sharing. I if I hadn't gone and spoken to this pastor, I wouldn't have had the connection to the university. So it's sort of you are being proactive as well, but you're not kicking the doors down and taking into your own. It is a submission to the will of God as well.
Yeah.
So it is kind of like you're doing it together, I guess, and seeking with Him, prayerfully, and getting a sense of the right thing.
So good.
I hope that's helpful.
So good.
I'm on a journey as well, like yourself.
Well, yeah, and I'm excited to see what the next chapter is in these transitions in your story. So thank you for sharing kind of the walking through and kind of the doubting and struggling and waiting and praying and talking with friends, and it's just been so interesting. There's so many other things I want to hear about, kind of what the fuel kind of side of things were, and you have so many interesting stories. So I appreciate what we got to talk about today, and look forward to maybe some more conversations down the line.
No, it's a joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
We invite you to visit our show notes page and website for more resources and information.
If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast and share with your friends. That would be a huge favor to us.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.